One summer, I visited two gardens just a few streets apart. The first had been breathtaking in spring. Tulips, daffodils, and other early flowers had filled every corner with color. But by midsummer, most of those blooms had disappeared. Empty spaces had taken their place, and the garden looked as though it was waiting for next year to come alive again. The second garden told a completely different story. Butterflies floated lazily from flower to flower. Bees buzzed contentedly in the warm afternoon sun. Fresh blossoms covered the borders in every direction, making it feel as if the garden had only just reached its peak. Naturally, I asked the homeowner what their secret was. They smiled and said, "Don't build a garden for one season. Build one that keeps surprising you all summer long." That simple advice changed the way I garden forever. Instead of choosing flowers that put on one spectacular show before fading away, I started filling my garden with dependable perennials that bloom for weeks and sometimes even months. The result wasn't just more color. The garden became more peaceful, more welcoming, more alive. Today, I'm sharing 10 of the longest blooming perennial flowers that can keep your garden bursting with life from late spring until the first signs of autumn. Some are magnets for butterflies and hummingbirds. Others laugh at heat and dry weather. And the flower we've saved for the very end has earned a reputation for blooming so faithfully that many gardeners plant it year after year without hesitation. Let's begin with a cheerful little flower that seems determined to brighten every sunny corner it grows in. Number 10. Coreopsis, a little sunshine that lasts for months. If happiness had a flower, it might look like Coreopsis. Its cheerful blossoms glow in shades of bright yellow, rich gold, warm orange, and deep crimson, dancing gently above delicate green leaves whenever the breeze passes through. Walk past a patch of Coreopsis on a summer morning, and it's almost impossible not to smile. But its beauty isn't the only reason gardeners love it. While many flowers bloom for only a few weeks, Coreopsis often continues producing fresh blossoms from early summer until autumn if you give it just a little attention. That's what makes it such a dependable choice. Instead of putting all its energy into one big display, it keeps rewarding you with wave after wave of color. Pollinators appreciate it just as much. Bees visit throughout the season, and butterflies are frequent guests, making the garden feel full of movement and life. Coreopsis grows best in a sunny location where it receives at least 6 hours of direct sunlight each day. It isn't particularly fussy about soil, but it does prefer ground where rainwater drains away instead of collecting around the roots. Once the plant has settled in, it handles dry spells surprisingly well, making it an excellent choice for gardeners who don't want to spend every evening watering. Here's one simple trick that experienced gardeners swear by. Every week or two, gently remove flowers that have finished blooming. It only takes a few minutes, but the plant often responds by producing even more blossoms instead of focusing on making seeds. Sometimes the smallest habit creates the longest season of beauty. Number 9. Russian sage, a purple mist that never seems to end. From across the garden, Russian sage almost looks like a cloud of lavender floating above the flower beds. Thousands of tiny blue-purple blossoms cover tall silver stems, creating a soft, airy display that sways gracefully with every breeze. The effect is calming, elegant, and impossible to ignore. What most people don't realize is that Russian sage is far tougher than it looks. This plant actually thrives in conditions where many other flowers begin to struggle. Hot afternoons, dry summers, poor soil. It simply keeps growing. In fact, gardeners sometimes discover that giving it too much fertilizer encourages lots of leafy growth, but fewer flowers. Russian sage prefers life to stay simple. Give it plenty of sunshine. Avoid areas where water sits after heavy rain, and it will reward you with months of blooms. Once established, it rarely needs frequent watering, making it one of the easiest long-blooming perennials for busy gardeners. At the end of winter, or just before fresh growth begins in spring, cut the old stems back close to the ground. Within weeks, fresh shoots appear, preparing for another spectacular season. Some flowers demand constant attention. Russian sage quietly proves that resilience can be just as beautiful. Number 8. Blanket flower, summer's own sunset. Imagine capturing the colors of a summer sunset and turning them into a flower. That's exactly what a blanket flower feels like. Each bloom combines fiery shades of scarlet, orange, gold, and sunny yellow, creating a display that glows from across the garden. Even during the hottest afternoons, when many flowers begin to fade, blanket flowers seem completely unfazed. That's because they naturally evolved in open prairies where sunshine is intense and rain isn't always guaranteed. Instead of struggling through heat, they embrace it. Once established, they continue blooming through much of the summer with surprisingly little care. Butterflies are frequent visitors, and bees happily gather nectar from their colorful blooms, making blanket flowers just as valuable for pollinators as they are for gardeners. Choose the brightest, sunniest part of your garden for the best display. They also appreciate soil, where water drains away easily after rainfall. One mistake beginners sometimes make is trying to feed them too much. Rich fertilizer often encourages leafy growth instead of flowers. These plants are happiest when life stays simple. Sometimes less really is more. By now, you've probably noticed a pattern. The flowers that bloom the longest usually aren't the ones that need the most care. Many of them evolved in places where they had to survive hot weather, dry conditions, and changing seasons all on their own. That's exactly what makes them so dependable in home gardens today. But we're only getting started. The next flowers don't just bloom for months. They also turn your garden into a gathering place for butterflies, hummingbirds, and hardworking bees. And one of them has become one of the easiest perennials I've ever recommended to new gardeners. Number 7. Salvia, the flower that pollinators can't resist. Spend just 5 minutes near a blooming salvia plant, and you'll understand why it's one of the most popular flowers in pollinator gardens. Hummingbirds hover beside the flower spikes. Butterflies drift from blossom to blossom. Bees seem to arrive from every direction. Its tall stems carry dozens of small flowers in shades of deep blue, violet, purple, pink, red, or white, adding height and color without overwhelming the rest of the garden. The real secret is its long flowering season. Many perennial salvias bloom heavily in late spring, then continue producing fresh flower spikes well into late summer, and sometimes even longer if faded stems are trimmed away. Because the flowers are packed with nectar over such a long period, they provide an important food source for pollinators, when many other plants have already finished blooming. Plant salvia somewhere sunny, where the soil doesn't stay soggy after rain. Once it's established, it can handle short, dry periods much better than many gardeners expect. Every time the first wave of flowers begins to fade, trim those old flower spikes. Before long, fresh stems appear, followed by another beautiful flush of blooms. It's one of nature's simplest ways of saying, I'm not finished yet. Number 6. Catmint, the carefree garden companion. If every garden had one flower that quietly did its job without asking for much in return, catmint would be near the top of the list. Soft gray-green leaves form neat mounds that gradually disappear beneath hundreds of lavender-blue blossoms. From a distance, the plant almost looks like a gentle purple cloud stretching across the flower bed. The fragrance adds another layer of charm, while bees and butterflies visit throughout the season. Catmint is one of those rare plants that seems perfectly happy with very little attention. Give it sunshine. Plant it where rainwater doesn't collect around its roots. Then simply let it grow. Once established, it handles hot weather and occasional dry spells remarkably well. Here's one of my favorite gardening tricks. After the first big wave of flowers begins to fade, trim the entire plant back by about 1/3. At first, it may look like you've removed too much. But within a few weeks, fresh green growth appears, followed by another beautiful round of blooms that often lasts well into late summer. Sometimes giving a plant a fresh start is exactly what it needs. So far, we've explored flowers that can fill your garden with color for weeks while asking for surprisingly little in return. But the next 5 have something even more special to offer. Some bloom so generously that your garden feels alive from one season to the next. Others become gathering places for butterflies, bees, hummingbirds, and even birds long after the flowers have faded. Let's continue with a classic that has brightened cottage gardens for generations. Number 5. Shasta daisy, a classic that never goes out of style. Some flowers never lose their charm. The Shasta daisy is one of them. Its crisp white petals surround a sunny golden center, creating a look that's simple, cheerful, and timeless. Whether planted along a garden path or grouped in large drifts, these flowers instantly brighten the landscape. But here's what makes them even more impressive. Instead of blooming all at once and disappearing, Shasta daisies continue sending up fresh flowers throughout much of the summer when cared for properly. Every bloom seems to invite another one to follow. Butterflies and bees visit often, while the sturdy stems also make excellent cut flowers for bringing a little sunshine indoors. They grow best where they receive plenty of sunlight each day and where rainwater doesn't remain around the roots after storms. One simple habit keeps them blooming much longer. Whenever a flower begins to fade, snip it off just below the spent bloom. The plant quickly shifts its energy toward producing fresh flowers. instead of seeds. Sometimes a few seconds of care can reward you with weeks of extra color. Number 4. Yarrow, the survivor that loves tough conditions. If you've ever wished for a flower that seems almost impossible to discourage, yarrow deserves a place on your list. Its flat clusters of tiny flowers rise above soft, feathery leaves, creating colorful clouds of white, yellow, pink, peach, orange, or deep red. Even during long stretches of hot, dry weather, yarrow often continues blooming while many neighboring plants begin to struggle. That's because its roots grow deep into the soil, helping it find moisture that shallower-rooted plants can't reach. This natural toughness has made yarrow a favorite in gardens for centuries. It's also one of the best flowers for attracting beneficial insects. Ladybugs, lacewings, and tiny parasitic wasps often visit yarrow flowers, helping reduce common garden pests naturally. Plant it in a sunny location and avoid watering too frequently once it's established. In fact, too much water can leave it less healthy than too little. Nature designed this flower to be resilient. Sometimes the strongest plants are the ones that need us the least. Isn't it fascinating? The flowers that bloom the longest often teach the same lesson. They aren't demanding. They simply ask for the right conditions, a little patience, and the freedom to do what nature designed them to do. And now we're moving into the final 3. These are the flowers many experienced gardeners refuse to garden without. Number 3. Coneflower, beauty that keeps giving. Coneflowers have a quiet confidence about them. Their colorful petals stretch outward like rays of sunshine, while their raised bronze centers create a striking focal point that catches the eye from across the garden. Available in shades of purple, pink, white, orange, yellow, and even rich red, coneflowers fit beautifully into almost any landscape. They begin blooming in early summer, and often continue producing flowers until cooler autumn weather arrives. But their value doesn't end there. After the petals finally fade, the seed heads remain standing. Instead of removing them immediately, many gardeners leave them through autumn because goldfinches and other small birds happily feed on the seeds. In other words, one plant provides beauty for people, nectar for pollinators, and food for wildlife. Coneflowers love sunshine and don't mind occasional dry weather once they've settled into the garden. Just avoid planting them where water stays around the roots after heavy rain. Sometimes a flower keeps giving long after its blossoms are gone. Number 2. Black-eyed Susan, a golden glow until autumn. There's something wonderfully welcoming about black-eyed Susans. Their glowing golden yellow petals surround deep chocolate-colored centers, creating a cheerful display that seems to brighten every corner of the garden. By midsummer, when some flowers begin slowing down, black-eyed Susans are often just getting started. They continue blooming for weeks, filling flower beds with warm color right through the approach of autumn. Their long flowering season makes them especially valuable for bees and butterflies, which continue searching for nectar late into the growing season. They're also wonderfully forgiving. They grow well in average garden soil, enjoy sunny locations, and once established, they can handle short periods without rain. Every few years, gently divide larger clumps and replant them around your garden. Not only does this keep the plants healthy, but it also gives you beautiful new flowers without buying more. One healthy plant can quietly become many. Number 1. Geranium Rozanne, the flower that refuses to quit. Our final choice has earned an extraordinary reputation among gardeners around the world. Not because it's flashy, not because it's rare, but because it simply keeps blooming again and again and again. Geranium Rozanne produces an endless display of rich violet blue flowers with delicate white centers that seem to float above lush green leaves. Unlike many perennials that bloom once before taking a long rest, this remarkable variety often continues flowering from late spring until the first frost under good growing conditions. That's an incredibly long performance for a single perennial. It spreads gently across borders, softening pathways and filling empty spaces with waves of color without becoming difficult to manage. Plant it where it receives several hours of sunlight each day. In especially hot climates, a little afternoon shade helps keep the flowers looking fresh during the hottest part of summer. Water regularly while it's becoming established, but once its roots are settled, it becomes surprisingly easy to care for. If the plant begins looking tired in midsummer, don't worry. Trim it back lightly, give it a good watering, and before long, fresh leaves and another flush of flowers usually appear. It's one of those rare plants that always seems ready for an encore. Sometimes the longest-lasting beauty isn't the loudest. It's simply the most dependable. When people picture a beautiful garden, they often imagine one magical moment, a perfect weekend, a single season, a photograph filled with flowers. But truly memorable gardens aren't built around one spectacular week. They're built around plants that quietly keep showing up, month after month. Flowers that continue feeding bees when nectar is scarce. Flowers that welcome butterflies all summer long. Flowers that greet you every morning with fresh color, even after weeks of heat. The secret isn't planting more. It's planting smarter. Choose flowers that naturally bloom for longer, and your garden begins working with nature instead of against it. Picture yourself stepping outside on a warm summer morning. Coreopsis glows like tiny suns along the border. Russian sage sways gently in the breeze. Blanket flowers blaze with sunset colors. Hummingbirds dart between the salvias, while butterflies drift lazily over catmint. Nearby, cheerful Shasta daisies nod in the sunshine. Yarrow attracts helpful insects. Coneflowers feed both bees today and birds tomorrow. Black-eyed Susans brighten every corner. And Geranium Rozanne is still producing fresh blossoms, just as it did weeks ago. Instead of one short burst of color, your garden stays alive with movement, fragrance, and beauty for months. That's the kind of garden people remember, not because it was perfect, but because it always felt alive. Now we'd love to hear from you. Which of these long-blooming perennials would you be most excited to grow in your own garden? Do you already have a favorite flower that keeps blooming far longer than you expected? Share your experience in the comments below. Your ideas could help another gardener discover their next favorite plant. And if you enjoyed exploring these remarkable flowers with us, be sure to subscribe to Roots and Remedies. Every week, we share practical gardening tips, forgotten plants, edible treasures, and simple ways to create a thriving, beautiful garden that's easier to care for and more rewarding to enjoy. Until next time, keep planting, keep learning, and remember, sometimes the most beautiful gardens aren't the ones with the most flowers, but the ones where something wonderful is always in bloom.